So it's been a while since we did a two-stock Tuesday, and recently I've bought into one of these companies and I'm really looking at buying into the second one. So I thought, what a better opportunity am I going to get to do a two-stock Tuesday on BP stock and Shell stock. Okay, Shell and BP, as we all know, are big oil companies, mainly based in Europe, but have offices and locations all around the globe. Two of my favorite stocks, mainly because of their strong dividends, historically, not currently, and also their innovations in the market, also outside of oil. So if you want to learn a bit more about BP, I did a video on it here. I strongly recommend you watch it because there'll be a lot more details into why I bought BP. And full disclosure, I did buy more of BP this week on Thursday. And if you want to know when I buy and sell stocks, check out the Patreon link in the description. And before you click description, make sure you've hit that like button, subscribed, and turned on the bell. Now let's start with Shell stock. Okay, Shell has a market cap of 79 billion euros, give or take. And it's January highs. And the reason I'm saying January is we had a big oil crash. So I don't really want to talk about COVID. COVID was sort of the second catalyst of around about 26 euros per share. Currently riding at around 10 euros per share, and its 3-year high was, well, 30 euros a share. So if COVID finishes and we get an oil price surge, there's a good potential to 3x your money and potentially get dividends along the way. That simple, really. Simply Wall Street says they are 64% undervalued. They do not have a PE or a PEG ratio because they are not profitable over the last quarter, but their short-term assets are 86 billion and their liabilities short-term are 69 billion. And you have a long-term assets of 288 billion versus 145 in liabilities. Their debt to equity ratio is actually very good too, with 47%, so they've got a lot of room to move there. They did used to pay a 5% dividend, but I believe that is no longer with us. And there has been sort of some insider buying about 6 months ago. Not too much, to be honest. BP fundamentals, on the other hand, BP has a 43 market cap, so it is slightly smaller, but you've got to remember that is also in pounds, so it's not that much smaller. January 2020, they were currently riding at £5 a share. They're currently at £2.18, and they have a 3-year high of 5.95. So again, not dissimilar in terms of potential returns. Apparently on Simply Wall Street, but they are 6.7% overvalued. Their PE and PEG is negative. Their assets and liabilities short-term are 73 and 53 billion, and their long-term assets and liabilities 189 billion and 123 billion in liabilities. Their debt to equity ratio is a lot higher. It's 91%, but they are paying a dividend. A lot of oil companies, in fact, most of them did slash their dividends during COVID. And BP said, well, we'll slash it, but not by much. I did get my dividend on BP and I was quite happy about it. They've got a recent CEO that got put in charge this year and he's got some very good plans. And again, I strongly recommend you check out that video that I posted earlier on BP stock and you can see why I think BP is a solid company to look at adding to your portfolio right now, and especially at these prices. Now, why are these stocks so cheap and do they face bankruptcy? Well, no, I don't think they have a chance of going bankrupt because of the stuff they do outside of oil, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Now, oil started tailing off before COVID really happened. We actually had negative oil prices for the first time in history this year. Throw in COVID, throw in a massive supply and demand problem. We've quite simply got too much oil in warehouses than what we are using. So these companies cannot really drill and produce oil because no one's using it. So until the world reopens, you're probably just going to get continually falling prices in BP and Shell. That said, I do expect some form of stabilization at around the current prices. So don't go all in right now. Try and scale in like 5-10% every big dip. That's my plan anyway. Now, I did say these are two of my favorite oil stocks, and I'll tell you why. Mainly probably because it's in Europe, not the US. And the fracking thing scared me in the US, I'll be quite frank with you. But let's look at Shell a little bit closely. Now, this is a very ambitious goal. By 2050, I know it's far away, they want to have, by 2050 or before, zero net emissions on producing anything. So zero, nil, nada. And for an oil company to say they're gonna have zero emissions, that's it's quite far away. It's a big stretch now. But they are going to that. They've got solar farms, wind farms, and things like that oncoming, same as BP, and they've been massively investing into renewables for decades, a lot longer than most of the other companies. I keep hearing people like Tesla saying they're an energy company investing into solar, etc. BP and Shell have been doing this for literal decades. They have wind farms all around Europe and solar farms all around the world. So yeah, renewables, you've got to sort of look at the old guys for the new guys, if that makes sense. The biggest news probably on Shell was they recently cut their dividend, and it'll save them $9 billion a year, which is mega money when companies like oil companies are just burning through money. And I think BP not cutting it are probably thinking, damn, we maybe should have cut it. But I get it, they wanted to get people jumping in their stock and helping, keep the dream alive a little bit. Their goals is, like I said, they are building more and more solar plants and looking more and more into renewable, and they plan to massively extend this feature later as well by having all of their factories be zero emissions by 2050. While researching, I found this out, and I thought it was a really good start. They actually provide power, renewable power, to over 100,000 homes in the UK. That's renewable energy, not oil, not gas, complete renewable energy, 100,000 homes in the UK, and they're looking to expand, which I did not know about, to be honest. And it really makes me want to think about buying a position in Shell in the coming weeks. The big news with Shell, in my opinion, or the biggest news, is the biofuels project. Now, if you don't know what biofuels are, I strongly suggest doing some research. But basically, it's an alternative fuel source to power a car or a house, etc., by using things like, the last bits of corn, sugar, and things like that you can basically grow and then use as fuel. Now, it might sound something a bit out of Mad Max or some sci-fi movie, but it's actually a reality and it's working. Biofuels have got equally as good a chance as any other renewable, in my opinion, because, well, quite frankly, they're less harmful to the environment. And Shell is actually one of the largest distributors of biofuels on planet Earth. So if you're looking for a biofuel company, Shell is definitely one of the contenders, in my opinion. Moving on to BP, they also have goals of zero emissions in the future, but like I said, they did recently change their CEO, so they need a bit of more structure for a time frame to come on that. They've also massively invested into wind farms and solar farms over the last couple of decades, and again, check out that video, I go in more depth there. And the biggest news for BP for me is really their BP Infinite, where they've invested heavily and they're very close. In fact, that some say they're already there, but they're just waiting for it to be approved, where they can recycle plastics. Unrecyclable plastics can now be recycled according to BP Infinite. Now, why is that big news? Well, on this big environmental, surge the world is going on right now, you can probably gather, if you own a technology to recycle a plastic bottle, it's going to be big money as far as tech goes, because every company is going to need one. On planet Earth, every company that uses plastic is going to need one installed. And secondly, you've got a monopoly on the market if you have the patent to it, which I believe BP do. So BP Infinite literally could be bigger than oil itself, in my opinion, because, save the sea turtles and that. Now, the charts are very similar. Both are pretty much at lows and they continue to fall. Actually, in the chat room the other day, someone was saying, why is BP still falling? Well, quite frankly, COVID's still around and oil is still falling too. So until we see recovery in both of them, you're probably going to expect it to continue falling. Now, this is why every sort of couple of weeks I'm buying in BP and Shell with small size, and I'm just going to continue scaling in. And I really don't think these companies have a risk of bankruptcy, so I just think it's a matter of time. If you get a dividend along the way, happy days. I genuinely think these two are probably my favorite stocks in my portfolio, and they have a very high chance of, recovering very soon. Not to mention, if we do hit a market crash, industry tends to start booming and oil production tends to go up and oil stocks tend to go with it as well. So just bear that in mind. That's my opinion on the stock chart. Buy as low as you can, as much as you can, and keep doing it as long as you can. Now, which is my favorite out of BP and Shell? I'd have to go BP just because it's British. There's literally no way I can say between the two, because there's arguments for both, and I think both are very good. But reality, both of them. Buy both of them. Split your portfolio down the middle. You've got biofuels, heavily invested in one. Both are in biofuels, but Shell, I think, are much better at biofuels. And then you've got the renewable plastic with BP Infinite. So I think both of them are definitely worth an addition to a portfolio right now. That said, I am not a financial advisor in your location, so you need to make your own decision. What are your thoughts on BP? Have you got any other oil stocks you're looking at? Are you investing in oil, or do you think it's a joke and oil is dead and it's never coming back? Let me know in the comments. Please do hit subscribe, turn the bell, and that's it from me, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.